Good evening, everybody.
It's so great to see you all here. It's a joy to meet in person, and we are happy that you are coming to this event of Himalayan Life, Chasing the Light. My name is Karina.
And I'm Daniel.
We are the founder of Himalayan Life.
Oh, that sounds good. And not only are we the co-founders of Himalayan Life, we're cohabitating, have been happily for, what is it? I forget.
Over 30 years. So.
Oh my, that sounds dangerous. We're your co-MCs for tonight. And I have to be honest with you, we're the B team. And B in that case is not
of
B
course,
for Bergie.
Bergie team!
Well, yeah, we're the B team because the A team for MCing, they live in Chilliwack, on the island of Chilliwack, that is. And so they are the C team, quite honestly. So we are the B team, and happily so for tonight.
So what is the plan for tonight? Well, first, I want to say it will be amazing. It will be great. We will have short films about our work with Himalayan Life. We'll have live reports from Daniel, who just came back from Nepal after 19 months not being able to go back to Nepal. We will have an interview with friends who have been in Nepal and will share their experiences, and we'll have a great time together.
We also are quite mindful that this is the first time we have the chance to get together in this way in 2 years. It's been 2 years since we had the last Himalayan Life event, indoors that is. That was not our choosing, but there's that pandemic going on, and it's still going on. So we're very grateful to you that you've come out today, even though there is this pandemic. We're also mindful of the fact that there is a lot going on in all of our lives. Some of you are from the valley. Our hearts do go out to people who have been affected by the floods. These have been difficult 2 years with pandemic and heat dome and atmospheric rivers and whatnot right at our doorstep. So very often when I come back from Nepal, like I have just a couple of weeks ago, it feels like I'm coming from a place of frequent disaster to this wonderful place, BC. And it's still a very wonderful place, but this time it does feel like I had come from a place of less disaster to a place of more disaster.
Yes, and maybe you remember last year's theme of our Himalayan Life event. It was arresting the darkness. The darkness that street children have to endure every day, living on the roads, being beaten up, having broken bones, blue eyes, sores, no way to get a good night's sleep, and what will I eat today? Lots of darkness. And we try to show you how Himalayan Life is helping to arrest this downward spiral. But we are not stopping there. We do chasing the light. What do we mean? The light, the joy, the forgiveness it brings. We mean the hope of being in the light and going forward. So tonight, as our first short film, we see Chasing the Light. Enjoy.
So that's where they're sleeping, because that's the only place that never gets flooded. Between 10 and 12 boys sleep in here.
There are 15 boys here sleeping.
Sherpa. I am chaser of the light.
Hello, I'm Ashish and I'm chaser of the light.
I'm Korista, chaser of the light.
I'm Prem, chaser of the light.
I'm Lila, chaser of the light.
म शिशिर ज्योतिको सन्तान.
म अमृत ज्योतिको सन्तान.
My name is Prem. I'm the
chaser of the light.
Chasing the light. That's the topic for tonight. That's what we want to talk about. And I think it's a very befitting topic also for this time of the year. We've just entered the season of Advent. And I think the symbol for the season of Advent is lights. When driving across the city to come here tonight, you've seen the Christmas lights up in many places. And the light really is a metaphor for hope and peace and joy and love. The 4 Sundays of Advent that we celebrate at this point in the year. Himalayan Life is a Christian charity, a faith-based charity. And to us it is important that light as a symbol of life is at the very center of who we are and what we do. In that sense, that's our dream that we have for street children, for slave children, for abandoned children, or for regular community children, that they would be able to find the light. And you've seen our staff who are saying from the bottom of their heart, I'm a chaser of the light. And that's what we are, chasers of the light, trying to find that light, not just for ourselves, but for those whom we work with in Nepal. I'm often getting the question, so what exactly are you doing in Nepal? Where are your project locations? You keep on talking about Yangri, and you keep on talking about Ulleri and about Chitwan. So I thought I should walk you a little bit through our project locations tonight. And I know that some of you are map people, some of you love paper maps, others of you love your Garmin in your car, which tells you where to go. Here's the map. So we're talking about the Himalayas, the mightiest mountain range in the world, and nestled at the foothills of the Himalayas is Nepal, with a size that's just about the 10% of the size of BC, with a population of 38 million people, which is exactly the same population that Canada has. So it's quite crowded, and in that small, beautiful country, we have those project locations, Pokhara, Chitwan, and Yangri. So rather than me talking more and just talking about those project locations, I thought we do this map in a somewhat interactive way. Let me first take you to Yangri. Yangri, that place in the mountains. I see several people in this room who have been to Yangri, a place where the Sherpa live. Sherpa not being a vocation, as in mountain climbers or carrying the gear for climbers, but Sherpa is actually an ethnicity. These are the people who live close to Mount Everest. In Sherpa culture, there's some beautiful things. So I brought something here, and I need Karina. Can you come to me? Come, Karina. So what is this? In Sherpa culture, very important, this scarf, it's called kata. Whenever you want to thank somebody, whenever you want to greet somebody, whenever you want to honor somebody, whenever you want to tell somebody that you have friendship with them, then you get that scarf put on you, and it is just that. It's a symbol of beautiful friendship. And not just that. In Sherpa culture, now it gets really tricky because this thing is big and heavy. Can you see that? That's in Sherpa culture, that's kind of good that you're up here, hey? Now I got 4 hands rather than just one. In Sherpa culture, tea is very important. That's a tea maker. And the way this works is they put, now I'm saying they, that I'm kind of half Sherpa by now. So we put this absolutely awful tea leaf that's dried and has this very strong smell into that container, and in goes some boiling water and a lot of oil. So that's an interesting tea. A lot of oil and some yak yak butter. So the yak are those Himalayan cows, huge. And then they start just mixing it up because it doesn't mix well, right? You know that water and oil doesn't really mix. So you have to really work hard at that. And then last goes in salt, quite a bit of salt. And yeah, I can see Frank go, yeah, you had some of that. And she goes like that. I've actually kind of grown to appreciate it, at least as a symbol of friendship, because it's going to be served to you in those beautiful handmade cups, if you're lucky. That's exactly how it goes. And then you share a cup of tea. And well, the thing is, it's bottomless. Look at the size of that thing and look at the size of this. So you, the first time you have it, you go like, oh, I don't want that. But you realize it's been prepared with so much love and appreciation. I got to drink this. And you go like, fight, keep it down. Is there a plant somewhere? But you know, before you know it, what happens is you get a refill. And you get a refill again. So you have to really time this well. If you're too slow, they ask you, so you don't like my tea? Yeah, you don't want that. If you're too fast, refill after refill. So that's Sherpa culture. Thank you so much, Karina, for helping out here. Yangri Sherpa culture, very beautiful in the mountains. Let's go to Pokhara. And in Pokhara, we have most of our projects. I see several people who have been to Pokhara here. So we got our Street Children projects in Pokhara. We're going to talk more about those. We're going to see more films about those. But in Pokhara, we also have our recycling plant for plastic. And I brought a few things. How does that work? And why do we have a recycling plant? We started that as a social enterprise to create vocational training opportunities for street children who are no longer street children, who are actually youth and teenagers, but who never had formal schooling, who need a place to learn skills. And so the way this works is we have, well, let me first say we recycle a lot of bottles, like 24 million a year, something like that. And people go with plastic bags and they collect empty bottles, or they have these bags in their homes or in hotels or restaurants, and we pick them up, and then they come to our facility, and in our facility the bottles get sorted out, color, kind, and whatnot. Then they get chipped up and washed. And that's not just a little bit of scrubbing, that's actually quite a bit of machinery. It's a 9-stage washing process, including hot wash and hyper dry and whatnot. And then those chips, they get extruded and pelletized, and it becomes this beautiful product that we then sell back to the industry, and they're making new bottles out of that. But we're just in the process right now of adding a new step to this. Not so much us adding the step, but we're in conversation with several major outdoor brands. And the idea is that those chips, those recycled bottles that have been recycled from Pokhara and Kathmandu and the mountains, some from exotic places such as Everest Base Camp, and I'm not kidding, have come down on muleback all the way to Pokhara, to our facility. What if those bottles would live on as a jacket, or as a sweater, or a backpack, or a pair of shoes? And that dream right now is in the process of becoming reality. This is a spool of yarn that has actually been built entirely from our recycled material, and it's very, very cool. When I was in Pokhara just a few weeks ago, I went to a restaurant, and I knew that that restaurant used to employ one of our street boys who had gone through our entire range of programs, Sandeep, and that he had become a waiter. But because of COVID, I also knew that they had let go of most of their staff. I didn't know whether he was still there. Can you imagine how much fun I had? That's just a few weeks ago when I met Sandeep in the back, when going to the washroom, in fact. And Sandeep was building tables because at the plant he had learned to be a plumber, and he had learned to weld, and he had learned to be an electrician. but he had also learned basic skills in woodworks. And so he's still gainfully employed even throughout COVID. That was really a moment of great joy to me. South, at the very southern end of Nepal, you find, in that same small country where you have Mount Everest, you find the hot plains, the Gangetic Plain, where it's heat dome for 9 months a year. And I'm talking 45 to 50 degrees. Where you find rhinos and elephant and monkeys, lots and lots of monkeys, and where you find our project that mostly serves community kids, sport camps, day camps with all kinds of kids in slums. These are exactly the kind of programs that did no longer work throughout the pandemic because we were simply not allowed to gather. So that's the project location where we had to pivot most and do something entirely different throughout the pandemic. So that's where we've done a lot of relief work among some of the most backward people in terms of their ethnicity. We've been able to reach out to those families who were really at the, well, they were going hungry because of the pandemic. They didn't have food on the table because they're all day laborers. They work, they live from hand to mouth. And we had the awesome opportunity to distribute 80,000 pounds of rice in total, which has fed 2,000 families throughout the pandemic. And I'm very, very grateful about that. My prayer throughout the time has been that the relief that we're doing, we're not really a relief organization, right? We're working with children. We protect, nurture, and educate children. But my prayer has been that the relief work would lead to something new. And I'm so happy to tell you today that through the relief work that we've done in Chitwan, that now the door is opening up in that community that I've mentioned to build a hostel for school children. The situation is that there's about 20 villages that have one school, and some of the children walk 5 to 6 hours every day. Well, almost every day to go to school, because who walks 5 to 6 hours every day one way? Starting at 3 in the morning. You go today and you won't go tomorrow. And here we have the opportunity to start a hostel for those children adjacent to the school. And I look forward to tell you more about it next year when it will have become reality, God willing. A few stats about our work in Nepal and India. That's just another way of talking about Himalayan life. Over the past 12 months, we have roughly served 350,000 meals to children across all our projects, including street children, both in Pokhara and in Chitwan that I've just mentioned. We are housing 351 children in our various homes, and we're going to hear more and see more about those homes. As I just mentioned, we've delivered quite a bit of relief to families who were going hungry as a result of the pandemic. We have 140 of our own staff and about 260 more indirect staff, such as day laborers who help us with construction, or those who collect the bottles for us, and so on. So 400 people really draw a salary, have employment through Himalayan Life. And if one person looks after a family of maybe 5 people, then that's 2,000 people who've been having food on their table through Himalayan Life. We have recycled 24 million plastic bottles last year. That's a lot of plastic bottles, but it's actually down from previous years as a result of the pandemic. There's less tourism, there's less traveling, so there's less bottles around. Used to be around 50 million per year. If you put all the bottles that we have recycled in the 10 years of operating that recycling plant, if you put all those bottles on a train in boxcars, you get a train all the way from Vancouver to Chilliwack Hope, that region. And that would need to be a train that goes through water right now. Bad joke, sorry about that. We got 200 students who are enrolled at our school in Yangri. We got 90 former street kids living with us. 70 of those are children. We're going to talk more about those in a moment. 20 of those are young men who are still strongly connected with us, live with us, but now have employment elsewhere. And we have 13 girls at our street to school girls' home. And Karina is going to talk more about those 13 girls. And sadly, we have 5 major buildings that were swept away in the flash flood that we have unfortunately experienced on June 15th in Yangri. And we're going to talk more about that as well. Karina.
350,000 meals served to kids across all our programs. Wow, that's an amazing number, and it's quite something. But actually, that's part of what Himalayan Life is. I'm sure you can all read it. Our mission statement, our very short statement: protect, nurture, educate. And so that's what Himalayan Life is all about, to protect, nurture, and educate the kids in the Himalayas. And how we are doing that, we give you a little small film. Enjoy.
Himalayan Life's mandate is to protect, nurture, and educate children in the Himalayas. When I'm saying protect children, I'm first and foremost thinking of street children, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, also teenagers who live in the streets, who fend for themselves. And then there's unfortunately the drugs, glue sniffing, alcohol. It leaves a mark. And that's where Himalayan Life comes in. We offer them a place, not just to come and eat, but a place where they feel safe, where they're being looked after, where they have a respite from the street life, where they can just be out of that usual way of life, even if it's for a short time. And when they choose, they can stay permanently with us. That's where nurturing comes into the picture. Street children who want to make that step away from the street, they can move in one of our street to school homes. Then we can really look after them more in a context like a real family would. Each and every one of the street kids has to deal with severe trauma, so we care for them. We nurture them back from not life to life. Education, I think, speaks for itself. It is with great joy that I think of our school in the Yangri Valley, in a place that was completely destroyed by the 2015 earthquake. Not one house left standing, no schools left. And now in this valley, as little as a few years after this catastrophe, we have a thriving school with over 200 students, a school for which we have set as its goal to be a model school, a beacon of light in the educational system in Nepal. That movement from not life to life, not just for the kids, but for the entire family.
Isn't that just a beautiful movie? I have seen it many, many times, but each time I pick up something else, and it's almost like a little bit of magic in it. This way of from not life to life. This time I picked up on the word Daniel said that most of the kids, many of the kids are marked. Be it that they are physically marked, you saw the boy with the black eye, you saw those feet totally dirty and broken bones and just not life. And then maybe you picked up this little boy in the midst of other kids singing the action song. He had a red t-shirt on. His face was beaming life. This transformation from not life to life. I just love it.
I think we could go on for quite a bit about not life to life. In fact, that phrase, not life to life, was coined in a moment when I was being asked what the substance really is of Himalayan life. And I was struggling for words. What is it? And somehow all our staff have picked up on it. And we often speak about from not life to life, from darkness to light. It's the same metaphor. In fact, I have a friend from North Vancouver who has traveled with me for a number of times to Nepal, has helped also with setting up the recycling plant that we talked about before. And I think he came for 8 years, every single year, just for a short visit and help us with management and so on. And every single time he visited the street kitchen where we feed on a daily basis the children who live in the streets, where our staff cook for them and give them just a moment of peace from their life on the streets. And it's both beautiful, you've seen it, it's both beautiful and heartbreaking. It's really both. So transformation does happen, but not always and not immediately. Some of those kids have been coming for months and years, and then they don't come. And when they come again, our staff starts from scratch, and there's the addiction again, and the gang violence, and the abuse, and the whole package. And with others, we see the transformation happen, and they move on from the street to one of our street-to-school homes. Anyway, my friend who visits every year, I think it must have been the 6th year that he visited, he stood in that street kitchen. And he's not like me. I cry all the time. He does not cry. But I saw a tear. I swear, I saw a tear creep down his cheek. And he looked at me and he shook his head and he said, "It's got to be love." I have no other explanation for this. He said, it's got to be love. The same staff who were here every day 6 years ago are still doing it. Nobody can do this except for love. Chasers of the Light. That's what we're talking about, Chasers of the Light. Our next short film that we want to show you is, in fact, about that transformation. So I've just said that there is transformation, but there is not always transformation. I think chasing the light is not just transformation. I want to be clear about that. We have this propensity of measuring the effectiveness of charities, of Christian or non-Christian organizations in terms of sustainable change. But that's not all there is. I firmly believe that a child who's been fed today, that's a good thing. And a child who is hungry today is not a good thing, regardless of the fact whether the same child is going to be hungry or not tomorrow. And I also believe that transformation is what we should shoot for, that we want more than just those works of mercy or charity, which means just addressing today's need. We really, really do want transformation. So let's watch this next short film about the transformation we're seeing at the street to school homes, where the street boys go to after they've learned a little bit more what it means to live off the streets.
When they were on the street, they think there is no hope, there is no future. In the beginning, they are wandering only for the food only for the day. If there is no future, if there is no life, if there is no hope, they can easily lose their everything. If I see the person who live the life without hope and without future, I'm crying, because they are the image of God. They are the worthy. My vision, I have a heavy heart for the children, because If we invest the right way, good way, godly way to the children's, we will see the future. We will see the change even country. How can we bring them from no life to life? We are working on that track, on that way. Now, after a long time, after many years, our children can see that hope in future. We have a lots of boys and girls also. They found that hope in life, and now they are living that way. We have 70 children, boys and girls. They go to the school. He is Lakshman Thapa. He used to stay at the street, and we had connected long time with him. And he is very gentle. Now he is involving with the dog bite and also taking training how to fix a dog bite. And now he is very happy and he is getting better and he is strong. Yeah. Our Abhishek, we tried many times to bring him here to show the life, but it was very difficult. And the last few years back, we sat together, we try him to show the life, not only telling. Telling is very difficult, but to show the life. And after that, now he changed his mind, his attitude, his lifestyle, his focus, his hope. And like the same way, Parvinder, Shimon, so many. And now they are living on their hope, on their future. And we don't need to lead now, just help them.
I don't know about you, but this really knocks the breath out of me. It really does. It's a little bit like, I'm a skier. I love skiing. I love skiing here on the West Coast, be that on one of our local mountains or in the interior. But there's those very few rare moments when you go up Cypress or Grouse Mountain and you need to hit it just right. 3:30 in the afternoon, and the sun sets over the ocean, and it's cold, and there's mist, and there's a little bit of snow in the air, and just for a few brief moments, everything turns into gold. Have you ever seen that? Just for a few brief moments. And if you just happen to get to the top of the mountain, be that the peak, or be that Mount Strachan, and you see that I can barely breathe. It's so beautiful. It's so rare. And this is what I feel when I see those kids, when I see the joy. In fact, we had a workshop with a trauma-informed care specialist a number of years ago for our staff in Nepal. She's from Germany and has lived for many years in India, has worked with abandoned kids and street kids in that area of trauma-informed care. And she helped us understand better about the nature of trauma and how to help the kids and whatnot. But she was very clear. She was very clear that all we can hope for is that these kids that some of these kids might learn to live with their incredible woundedness, with that trauma that they have, and that they will learn ways of coping with the trauma. And I raised my hand and I said, Barbara, that's not really my dream. My dream is that they will overcome the trauma. And she looked at me and said, Daniel, you can't be seriously believing that. That's not happening. That's not the reality. But when I see these pictures, I keep on dreaming my dream. And I think it is possible. It is possible. And again, I think it's possible by the sheer love that our staff pour into these kids and by the grace of God. I have an announcement. Some of you have been to Nepal. Some of you have seen the very crowded circumstances we have in those several street-to-school homes where those 70 kids live. While I was in Nepal a few weeks ago, we've been able to find a new place for our street-to-school home. Somehow in God's provision, what happened is that a school that also had dormitories and hostel facilities went out of business, and they don't really know what to do with their property. By law in Nepal, they can't sell it. Once it's the association's property, it's not sellable. So they need to rent it out. And I said, I can help with that. And so for, believe it or not, $750 a month, we are now renting this building with a side building that's about half the size of it. And rather than having the kids in those crowded circumstances as before, we now have just moved them to this wonderful facility that also includes a basketball court, not a swimming pool though. But that's okay. So that's very wonderful. You will have noticed that we have spoken mostly about street boys, that you have seen mostly boys. And we'll do that for just a little bit longer before we move on to girls. But before we do that, I would like to invite Angela and Alan to come up. Angela and Alan have met, have visited rather than met 4 years ago, in 2017 in Nepal as part of a team, and they have seen the street kids. You have visited. We've seen the street kids mountain biking. That was at the time when we had just started our mountain biking program. One more avenue to work with the kids, one more avenue for the kids to discover, yes, we can do it. Yes, we are somebody. In fact, Alan, you have helped us build that workshop that we've seen there for a brief moment in the last video. And then I kind of afforded you guys the opportunity to go mountain biking with the street kids. Angela was very wise, you didn't go. And Alan, you were a bit less wise, but you had a good adventure. In fact, I had just had a new GoPro. And please notice the past tense, had a GoPro. And Alan was wearing it while he went mountain biking with the street kids. We were hoping to give you a little bit of the GoPro image, but it didn't work for tonight, so I give you the verbal image, okay? So I think you had it on your chest.
On the chest, yeah.
Good. And I think there was a choice of 2 tracks that you guys were going down, correct. And you were going down the easier track, is that correct? Kind of. Anyways, we talk about the track, but it really was a road. It's a Nepalese road that they went down. And I wasn't there, but my understanding is that things didn't go too well. Plus, I had the images to check out. And it's really funny because you see, I mean, the GoPro has a stabilizer, but because it was very bumpy, you get seasick from just watching it within seconds. And then the funny part is there was people on the side of the road that you guys came about. And it's a little bit unusual that you see a bunch of street kids on mountain bikes together with a bearded, rosy-cheeked Canadian. And so I think people were really looking at you. And you can hear Alan every time he passes somebody, namaste, namaste, namaste. That's how it goes. Well, and then the image becomes a little blurry and tumbly, and you were pretty badly banged up after that. Anyways, so that's the picture. We could go on about you, Kim, but let's not do that. Anyways, would you tell us a little bit about your experience, not so much of crashing, which you did, but...
You've described it aptly, yeah.
But the interaction with the street kids. Tell us more about it.
Yeah. After hearing from Chanman again, I'm like, I don't know why you have me talking at all. Like, I worked a fair amount with, we brought over a whole bunch of bike tools to basically set up a mechanic shop because they had been given 12, I think at the point, mountain bikes.
Correct.
A couple years before, and we figured, seeing pictures of what had happened, like these things are going to need a lot of care, that you might need a little bit more tools than what you had. So that was kind of one of the primary things I was working on when I was in Pokhara for the few days that we were there. So I had seen and worked with some of the staff and worked with what were some of the street kids that were now living there. Just being at the kind of, I guess, the sort of pinnacle level of like care and where the kids have gotten to, and done that for a few days while trying to set up this new shop. And then one day went to the street kitchen and just saw this like kind of the reverse of the like where they had come from to get there. And it was shocking regardless of what you have seen. Like there's like, I don't know how, Daniel says he doesn't know how his staff can keep their, like, it is love, and that it's so evident. But I don't know how Daniel can report like this over and over. Like, it's difficult to think of. Like,
It's because I'm a chaser of the light.
Yeah. Well, and there is, like, and that's where it's seen, like, where just, like, these kids that, like, were taking to every new thing they could learn about, like, okay, how do I take apart this part of the bike? Like, I'm trying to work with the staff, and there was especially one older kid, but like former street kid that was just so keen on learning everything about bikes. And already I'm like, well, why am I teaching it? Like, I'm not the best mechanic in the world, and this kid seems like he's just about there. Like, but just so keen to learn it all, and seeing like where this journey had started from, where, like, I mean, 5-6-year-old kids that like come running around the corner, like, and see this, these, clearly they can tell you're there, you're these, big white guys from Canada, like, you're there to hang out with them, and they know that. So there's that element of like kind of initial like just joy that like this is, and they're in a safe place, that you understand that they know it's a safe place too. But the first few minutes that you're there, then it's kind of, you see that initial kid reaction, and then you realize like most of these kids are just like, they're coming down off of their high from having sniffed glue, and they're 5, and like that was really hard to leave that day and talk about it now, obviously. But like, I think that the two things that like made me just physically be able to leave that place was that knowing, I didn't bring goodness or beauty or light there. That existed before I came. From a Christian faith, I can believe that. But knowing that the staff that were there, they have witnessed this for year upon year upon year, and had as much enthusiasm as somebody who just walked in there could ever bring to it. Like, just the love and care and the knowing of each kid, like mind-blowing. The care, the attention that each staff there had, still had, like, and just seeing that transformation, where we also saw the street to school, so kind of an intermediate from there, and then seeing these kids that were around, were working on bikes, and then touring the recycling factory, and like, oh, and this is where you work, or this is where you're going to the like vocational training, and did you hear, Daniel, like, this waiter who's now building tables is a welder, electrician, plumber. Like, these are the talent and the desire to learn is it's humbling to be like, why am I here? Like, just because I have Google at home and can learn how to fix a bike, is like, I brought these fancy tools. Like, but like, what am I even doing? Like, but it's to see that the eventual desire and just like chase light, like just to learn and see the light and the goodness in humanity and in things, whether it be serving people at a restaurant or building a table at a restaurant or fixing a bike or a motorcycle, to see that drive in a kid, this like this mirror image of what these staff were like how many years ago, serving a kid that's coming down off of a glue high, like just like most things in Nepal, it's hard to explain just the magnitude. Like it's like I haven't felt like I scratched it, but I feel like the videos have done a good job on that. So I'll forgive myself.
So did you. And one thing it becomes very evident, chasing the light, chasing hope, chasing peace, chasing love, chasing joy. Did I mention them all? It comes in many different guises, be that serving a meal, be that hanging out or setting up a workshop. It has all to do with chasing the light, chasing life for the kids. Thanks, Alan. Angela, you have hung out with the staff quite a bit. You want to share about that experience?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks again for having us answer a few questions. I do feel like after watching a couple of videos, we're like, oh, why are we here? Those did such a good job, but just to share from my experience, it was incredible to be there with the group of us that went, and just to come alongside the staff, both in Pokhara and a little bit in Ulari, and then at the street kitchen and at the shelter and the street to school, and just seeing, you know, what's already been talked about, these people that give endlessly with this continued hope. And I think what I came away with in my own personal reflection was sort of this very, I would say, sort of Western foolish mindset that I actually felt a little bit insecure going, because all of us on the team kind of had a reason for going to Nepal. Some people had an education background and were bringing some materials for the street to school. Some people were bringing pastoral skills. Some people were bringing the bike mechanic skills and some administrative skills, and everybody was coming along to help train these different staff in the different areas of Himalayan life that we were involved in while we were there. And I was coming along as like Alan's wife, and I knew the people from church, and it was a church thing, and I kind of had this like nagging insecurity of like, why did I come? Like, I just had the money to raise, like, you know, all these reasons we ask ourselves why we do any kind of volunteering or outreach, I guess, when you want to have a reason to be there. And then there I was, and you're watching these staff that every day choose to have hope for chasing the light, choose to hope that they might change one boy's mind. And now with these girls, like, they might change their minds, that they might give them a reason to stay a bit longer in the kitchen or to spend a night at the shelter, and especially at the street kitchen as well, with the women that were serving food, watching them prepare a meal. And I stayed afterwards to help with the dishes, and they couldn't believe I wanted to help with the dishes. And you come away sort of realizing that it's not about the skills I had to bring. It was about being there and how every interaction can matter, and kind of living. I've had this big word on my mind that I learned from Todd, for the people that know Todd. I couldn't explain it as a definition. I just know roughly what it means, but the word eschatological, like to live with this sort of mindset of where, you know, that we all kind of have an end. Let's throw that in there tonight. Chasing the light with an end. But just that idea that every interaction matters. And I think that you talked about, we get so caught up in success rate and how many kids had a lasting transformation, and how many, even in our world here, which is so different from there, it's like, you know, what degree do I have, or what have I accomplished, and who am I, what defines me? And I think being there sort of helped me break down that it's about like every interaction in the moment. Like, how do we choose to approach people? How do we choose to serve people? How do we choose to greet people? And you're watching the staff at Himalayan Life choose to love people, not because it's going to get them something, or it's going to, you know, give them another attaboy or whatever. Like, they're doing it because they love. And they are filled with that. And it makes you think of the perspective for me coming home, like, how can I do that here? How can I try and love people without the expectation of something for me. So, yeah, that's kind of what I came away with.
Thank you so much. And just 2 comments. I think it is okay to feel insecure in terms of what can I contribute? What can those 5 loaves of bread do really for 5,000 people? And what can my gifts do when I look at the immense need? But I think that's what it is, to be chasers of the light, to have hope that it is not just about what I can do, but what we can do with the grace of God. So thank you for making yourselves available. Thanks again for having come alongside our little Himalayan Life ragtag band of chasers of light and being co-chasers of light. Thank you very much. So as previously mentioned, we're going to talk about girls now, because those of you who have paid attention, you will have seen that there were girls in the transformation video, in that small film that we have watched just before, and Karina is going to say more about girls, because that's a lot more appropriate, because I'm not a girl.
Thank you, Daniel. Well, girls, did you know that 2 in 5 girls in the rural areas of Nepal are married by the age of 14? 2 out of 5. Or did you know that 30% of all girls are engaged in child labor in Nepal? That's 30%, a third. Or 10,000 to 15,000 girls are trafficked from Nepal each year. 10,000 to 15,000 girls. Well, those are staggering numbers, and as chasers of the light, we started a girls' home. We started a home for those little ones and bigger ones, and by now we have 13 girls in the home called Street to School Home for Girls. Well, let me tell you a story. Every quarter, our staff in Himalayan Life, they send us a report from the different projects, and this story is from the S2SG, so from the Street to School Home for Girls. The name is different, but I call her Kamala. Kamala is 4 years young. 4 years young. She doesn't know her dad. She lives with her mom somewhere up in the Mustang area. There is no work for her mom, so she can't earn food for her little girl and herself. So she comes down to Pokhara in search for work. She finds work at the construction site of a big, big building. Well, what should I do with this little girl? I don't know anyone. I can't take her to the construction site. Even for Nepal, that's too dangerous. So she leaves the little girl all by herself in the small room they can rent away from the construction site. And that's where Himalayan Life staff found that little girl and took her into the home where she now has meals, healthy meals to eat, where she now has clothes and a warm and safe place to sleep. And also she can go to school. And man, she loves to go to school and learn. And it's with great joy that we can say education and the possibility to learn, that changes the world. So it's a good thing that our Himalayan Life staff found Kamala. And she is not the only one. There are other girls which now find a safe home and a good environment to learn. And as we speak, when Daniel was over in Nepal, he started to the process that we can have a scholarship for those girls, so that they are not only just get through elementary school, but through secondary school, and then on, if they wish so, to university or into an apprenticeship. So from very small all the way up. And we are very happy that this is now going to start, a scholarship program for the girls across all our Himalayan Life projects. And this brings me into the next movie. Her name is now Kamala Batniri. See what happened to her. Enjoy.
One of our students is a girl named Niri. Her family lives in Ripar, a village far up the valley northeast of Yangri. Twice a month, Niri can go home over the weekend. In order to better understand her circumstances and get a first-hand glimpse of her home, we go with her. Without the boarding school in Yangri, Niri wouldn't have the chance to go to school at all. For her, the Yangri Academic Center is opening up new possibilities. 3,000 vertical feet and 3 hours later, we arrive in Ripar at Niri's home. Seeing how happy the parents are to see Niri is heartwarming. We too are being welcomed and served the traditional butter yak tea. It is beautiful and peaceful up here. The air is clean and crisp, the view incredible. Forgotten are the noises and fumes of the city. However, life is also very simple here. The houses are teeny. Food is being cooked on the open fire, and there are no sanitary installations. Like everybody else in the village, Niri's family are subsistent farmers. A few goats and a war buffalo are supplying a little bit of milk. While the hospitality and friendliness of Niri's family are truly touching, we do realize at the same time what Niri's future would look like without schooling. Getting married before 15, having children, tending the animals. All of this in a social environment where nobody is even literate. No access to magazines, newspapers, books. No literacy or numeracy. Only speaking Sherpa, a language which doesn't even let her communicate with the people further down the valley. The Yangri Academic Center truly opens up a new world for children in the Yangri area. Children like Niri.
This part of the movie was in Yangri. And as you know, Daniel couldn't go back to Nepal for more than 18 months, long months, where he communicated with Zoom and WhatsApp. I would say all around the clock, as it seemed to sound always Nepali or Hindi in our house. And finally, in end of September, he could go back to Nepal and stayed there for 7 weeks. Well, Daniel, how was it to be back in Yangri after this terrible flood of June 15th of this year?
Well, thank you, Karina, for this question. I've been back for 2 weeks, and that's probably been the question that everybody's asked me. How was Nepal? And every single time I go, because it's kind of difficult to summarize in a few words, how was Nepal? After finally I was able to go back after 18 months and then staying in Nepal for 7 weeks, there's lots that happened. As always, I went back with pretty clear goals in mind. I knew that, first of all, I needed to quarantine, which I did together with the project director from Yangri, my friend Sonam. We spent those 6 days up in the mountains of the upper Yangri Valley and used it as an opportunity to reflect and think through things. And then, of course, my next stop was Yangri. And my goal was clear for Yangri. Find a way forward after the June 15th flood. Perhaps it's easiest if I tell the story, even of my own emotion about Yangri, in 5 chapters. So I'm rewinding the time a little bit here. Chapter number 1. And the defining moment of chapter number 1 was immediately after the earthquake in 2015, when for the first time I came to the Yangri Valley, also with my friend Sonam, who is a resident originally of the Yangri Valley. That's a different story for a different day, what his experience is with his own home village and hometown and home valley. But shortly after the earthquake, only days after the earthquake, in fact, Sonam asked me whether I would be willing to travel with him to Yangri and assess the situation, because we had heard that it was bad, but there was no clear reports. So the two of us traveled first from Pokhara to Kathmandu. That was going okay. Then from Kathmandu, we hired a jeep as far as it would go. And the further we traveled northeast from Kathmandu towards the Yangri Valley, the more heartbreaking it got. The more buildings were destroyed, the more we saw the terrible, terrible effects of the earthquake. In fact, we couldn't get into the Yangri Valley the normal way. The roads were blocked. There was numerous landslides. So we had to travel into the parallel valley and then cross the mountains into the Yangri Valley. So I kind of entered it the wrong way from the very top, which also happens to be Sonam's village. That to me is the key experience of chapter 1 of my experience of Yangri Valley, is in fact that night I spent in Sonam's village, and then the next day traveling down the valley to the village of Yangri. It was raining. It was raining really, really hard. The earthquake had destroyed every single building in the region. Not one building left standing. We had a tent with us because we didn't know what we would find. We had food with us. And we arrived in Sonam's village, where also every single building was destroyed. There were other people there who were still digging through the rubble to find things. Nobody had come to grief, had been bodily, physically hurt in the earthquake in Sonam's village. But then, as I said, it was raining hard. It was dark because the little power plant in the region had been destroyed. And darkness, that's the key word that describes chapter number 1 of my experience of the Yangri Valley. It was so dark. You're way up in the mountains. You see down into the valley, not a single light, just pitch dark. And then it was raining. There was a thunderstorm, one of those mighty Himalayan thunderstorms. We were in our tent just trying to get sleep. And then there was an aftershock of the earthquake. And when I say aftershock, it was a 6.3 aftershock. That's a pretty good shaker. And so we've got rolled left and right, and then we didn't sleep. Chapter number 1. We traveled down the next day to Yangri village. That's typically, I would say, a 4-hour walk. I've done it many, many times since that time. It took all day because the roads were unpassable roads. They were all footpaths, unpassable with landslides, and we had to find our way. And as we got to Yangri, it was even worse than Sonam's village. People were still digging through the rubble to find their relatives who had been killed in the earthquake, in houses that had collapsed. It was absolutely terrible. Darkness, keyword darkness. That's chapter number 1. But in that chapter, at this first day in the Yangri Valley, somehow something worked in us. I would say Holy Spirit moment. But it became very clear to Sonam and myself, this is the place where we as an organization can make and should make and will make a difference. Where we can actually come alongside the locals, where we can exercise our calling as chasers of the light. And so a plan was formulated that we would help them, help the locals come alongside, first with relief, that we would help them with food and blankets, even run a medical camp and whatnot. And secondly, help them rebuild their infrastructure, bridge, drinking water, their small hydro dam, so that they would have light once again. End of first chapter. Second chapter. The key moment for me for the second chapter of the Yangri story is when pretty exactly a year after the earthquake, after many visits, after our staff had started working hard in the Yangri Valley, Karina had the first chance, I think it was your first chance, to go with me to visit the Yangri Valley. And it's a long trip from Kathmandu. It's hours and hours by jeep, and the road is not good. It's earthquake in a truck, basically, the whole way. And we arrived not in Yangri, which sits at the bottom of the valley, but we arrived at the mountain range from where you need to drive down or walk down to Yangri, depending on the road condition. And we reached that village up there just at twilight, after maybe 7 hours of travel from Kathmandu. And just as we were there, you know what happened? The lights went on. It was the third day that the hydro dam that we had rebuilt as an organization down in Yangri was actually operational. And the lights went just on as we were there. And the 15 villages in the Yangri Valley lit up. It was magical. It was just like that moment on Grouse Mountain, when it all turns to gold. Chapter 1, keyword, darkness. Chapter 2, keyword, light. There was light. And it was not just that. In that second chapter, it was decided in consultation with the locals, with the local government also, that the way for us to continue to come alongside them would be to build a school that was going to transform that valley. We've talked about that in the film. I don't need to repeat myself. And so that's part of chapter 2. That was what we've been doing for the past 4 years. Building the school, designing the school, bringing in the architect from Naramata who helped us with designing this beautiful timber-framed building with those large natural light-filled classrooms, south-facing, so much so the sun hits the glass of those classrooms only early morning and late in the evening, but at noon, when it gets hot, the large overhang is providing shade to the classrooms so that even climatically, it's almost like they have air conditioning, but they don't. They are wonderful buildings. Building one building after the other, a classroom building, a dorm building, another classroom building, a third classroom building, a fourth classroom building, the kitchen, the canteen, the sports field, the total of 3 dormitories, one also for the staff accommodation, a workshop. And finally, in April 2021, chapter 2 came to closure, where the school was completed for operations of kindergarten to class 6. Final touches were put on during the pandemic when we had to find ways of running the school with distance education and distributed learning and whatnot, but never did the work stop until April this year when finally it was done. The flagpoles were set. The final touches of paint came on. The flowers were planted. It looked beautiful. And before I talk about chapter 3, there's a little film about that.
In 2015, the earth shook in Nepal, an event that went down in history as the Himalayan mega-quake. Everybody lost something, and many lost everything. Our big project here is building a school, which I believe will transform this entire valley and will bring a new way of living to this place.
It is with great joy that I think of our school in the Yangri Valley. We have a thriving school with over 200 students, a school for which we have set as its goal to be a model school, a beacon of light in the educational system in Nepal,
Still under lockdown due to COVID-19.
But we're doing distributed teaching, whereby our teachers go to the villages wherever we have a bubble of kids, so much so each and every child has at least 1 day of instruction per week.
On June 15th, 2021, a cataclysmic flood occurred in the Yangri Valley and destroyed several Yangri Academic Center buildings. Many villages and towns in the valley were severely damaged.
On a pretty day like today, it is difficult to even grasp the magnitude of the flash flood that has occurred here. The flash flood happened during the night. At around 8 p.m., Sonam noticed the inexplicable behavior of the river. It was running high and low in rapid succession. He ordered the evacuation of the school. Around 9 p.m., everybody had been evacuated to higher ground. 2 hours later, the flash flood came shooting down the valley on top of the already swollen river. We estimate that the flash flood was about 20 feet above the normal river level. Within 3 minutes, 5 major buildings were taken out from our school. We're not the only one who suffered damage. Our neighbors, who had run a dairy farm and supplied us with buffalo milk on a daily basis, lost their house and their animals, and much of their land.
With all bridges swept away, they had parents of students risking their lives by crossing the raging river with the help of a rope tied around their waist, just to tell Sonam and the team to please not give up on their kids. We won't.
The part of the Yangri village, which is on the other side of the river, was taken out substantially. Some buildings are still there. Some buildings are completely gone. Sonam tells me that the first building was swept away and floated completely intact without even falling apart all the way down to the confluence of the Yangri River with the Indrawati River, where it finally disintegrated.
Himalayan Life's immediate response was to provide supplies and support to those most heavily affected. Currently, Himalayan Life has set up temporary schooling. The next step is to rebuild the elementary school that was recently wiped out in the disastrous flood and build a secondary school alongside it in a new location. Plans for the new school have already begun.
I'm not too sure that I have adequate words to describe chapter 3 of my own emotions about the Yangri school and my journey with the Yangri school. But if I just focus on that moment when finally I get to your question, Karina, how was it getting back to Yangri? When I was getting back to Yangri, end of September, once again, I had traveled the 7-8 hours by jeep from Kathmandu, this time back to back after having traveled from Canada via Switzerland, via Qatar to Kathmandu, gone into quarantine, and now coming again to the Yangri school. It was again evening time, and it was dark. Once again, just like in 2015, because not just the school, but the hydro dam too had been completely destroyed by the flash flood. Dark again. And yet, me too. I too am a chaser of the light. And I choose to focus on those rays of light and hope, even though there would be plenty of room to mourn the fact that, yes, we have lost 5 major buildings. But then I think I choose to celebrate the fact that nobody has come to grief. I'll go back for a moment to June 15th, when I got a text on my phone. And I typically don't communicate by text with our staff, but I got a text, and the text simply said, that's a rough translation, flash flood, Yangri River, imminent danger of being swept away. That's it, from Sonam. And then 5 hours, nothing. And we tried hard. We communicated with all our staff outside Yangri. Nobody knew about the flash flood. It's actually quite amazing that Sonam was able to shoot me that text. Nobody knew. And it was night. And so we had people in Kathmandu and in Pokhara try every single one of the 30 plus phone numbers we had of staff in Yangri. And nobody answered their phones. 5 hours. For 5 hours, that was darkness. Whew, I get a bit emotional here, but that was darkness when we had to assume that our staff, and we didn't know at the time that no children were on at the school when it happened, but when we had to assume that possibly everybody had been swept away. And then finally, 5 hours later, I get a phone call from Sonam, from a number I didn't recognize. Turns out it was the old satellite phone we had from back at the time when the earthquake had happened. I don't understand how that satellite phone still worked, because we sure had not paid our subscription for the past 5 years. But he phoned me and said, "We're okay. The school is gone." And then we were cut off. That's probably the balance we had left over. I don't know. Which is probably about $100. So you understand what I'm saying when I'm saying I think I choose to focus on those rays of light. Everybody is fine. We have come that close to a very different headline that I don't even want to go into. So to me, yes, it was sad to get back to Yangri, and it was dark again. And yes, I celebrate the fact that everybody is well. And people were saying to me, "We've lost the school." And I said, "No, we haven't. We lost a bunch of buildings." Actually, it turns out that we lost everything. There's still a few buildings there. You have seen that in the video with the tents and whatnot. But our school now is really in the midst of a riverbed. We're on borrowed time there. It's gonna go during the next monsoon season, or maybe the year after. And you've seen how bad upstreams looks like from that helicopter footage. It's a question of time. So we'll need to relocate. We need to rebuild. But we haven't lost the school. We have built up so much. We have a reputation. We have the trust of the parents. We have children. We have teachers in whom we have invested a lot of training. We have a legal standing for that school. There's a lot there that we have not lost. And so chapter 3, even though it looks dark, it's not completely dark. Or at least not in my book. Which leads me to chapter 4. Fast forward from my visit in September to 2 weeks ago, just before I left Nepal, I was once again in Yangri. And that's chapter 4. The lights are on again. Well, not all the lights, but we have a small generator that's running. Moreover, there's not just a few lights on. All the kids are back. K to 7. Everybody's back in person. And all the classes are running. Yes, some are running in tents. Yes, some are running makeshift, even beside the building. What used to be beautiful corridors of the school are now makeshift classrooms. We'll just make do. Yes, 2 of our staff of over 30 have quit, but the other 28 didn't. We have consulted with the staff. We've really wanted to respect if somebody couldn't quite see that for themselves any longer to work under these circumstances. I mean, the staff accommodation building, that's the building that they saw go first. That's the building that Sonam was talking about that they've seen floating intact down the river before it disintegrated. A little bit like Noah's Ark, eh? No animals. You have to deal with that. That's the building where they had all their stuff in, their furniture, their everything. They lived in that. And to come to the conclusion that, yes, I'm a chaser of the light and I accept the fact that there is risks involved with my work, that takes guts. That takes a great heart. And I am so, so grateful that, except for 2, all of our staff have come to that conclusion, yes, we're continuing. And so, in chapter 4, we now have the school running again. It might be temporary. It might be in buildings that have a limited lifespan. But it's running again, and everybody is once again doing their work with hope and with joy and with much dedication and with passion. Which leads me to chapter 5. Chapter 5. What could it be, chapter 5? Now, that's the future. But the future has already began. The future is rebuilding the school. I am so pleased to tell you that we're making great headway in finding land for the new school. As I pointed out before, not only did we lose the buildings, we also lost the land. It's simply a write-off. So we have to start from scratch. We accept the fact that that's just fact. We need 5 acres of land to rebuild the school because this time what we want to do is have K to 12 all in one location. You know, there would have been a different plan for chapter 3. You know that, right? Chapter 3 was supposed to be a secondary school after we have built K to 7. The plan would have been to now build 8 to 12. And instead of that plan 3A, we are really in plan 3B, 4, and 5 now. And plan 5 is 5 acres of land, build those student dorms, build the classroom buildings once again, a dining hall, the kitchen, and I'm dreaming of a gym this time. What if we had a gym? Because we have awesome monsoon season in Nepal, where it rains hard for 3 months. I just read that Abbotsford has received 541 millimeters of rain in November, which is the all-time record. The record for the town south of Yangri. We've seen pictures, that town that was inundated in the flash flood. The record for one day in that town is 380 millimeters. It's rainy during the rainy season. So why not an indoor gym? Why not? So that the students can have PE even in the wet season. And of course you need infrastructure, drinking water, power, septic system, and so on. So that's chapter 5. Chapter 5, rebuilding the school, buying the land. And I have another announcement here. It's absolutely wonderful that a donor from Switzerland, you know that Green and I are Swiss, that's our strange accent, hey? A donor from Switzerland has graciously given us the funds to buy the land. We can buy the land. And we're now in negotiation with landowners. Nobody owns 5 acres of land. It's going to be a land assembly, like 20 or 30 people or so. And I've just received word last night from Sonam that 95%, I don't know what 95% of 20 people are. I'll let you do that math. That 95% of all the people are agreeable to sell the land to us, and that we can proceed with this very, very soon. So that's good news. Which leads me really to the last part of this evening, also part of chapter 5. And that's simply a question to you. We need your help to rebuild that school. We really, really need your help. We need your help in many ways. We also need your help with regard to the financial needs that this brings along. It's going to be not something we can get done in 1 year or 2, but let's just start one building at a time. We can buy the land, and as soon as we have the land, we would like to start by building the first classroom building, just like we did last time. Same style building, exactly the same, with those beautifully handcrafted wooden benches and tables, the building that is built with homemade glulam beams, as you have seen them in the picture. Oh, you see a picture right here of the structure. And the question is, will you help us in our job of being chasers of the light? And by doing so, will you be chasers of the light with us really, as we do so? The first building is going to cost us roughly $50,000, which, if you look at the building and what it is probably cheap, but it's still a lot of money, at least in my book. Here's a few stats for you, just to give you an idea what it costs to rebuild our first classroom building. A door, a handcrafted door, or 2 bags of concrete can be bought for $50. That's the cost. Whiteboard, it's actually whiteboard and blackboard for a classroom, is about $250. As is paint, or as is the glass for the windows for one classroom. Every classroom is outfitted with a projector and screen. We're a model school. We're really putting a lot of emphasis on good equipment. So projector and screen, or the plywood and the drywall for one classroom. That's $1,000 worth of material, as is the insulation. Unfortunately, we also lost the entire tool shed, the bandsaw, all the tools, every hammer, every wheelbarrow, every pickaxe, all is gone. So the bandsaw, for instance, is $3,000 to replace. $3,000 would also pay for one person it will pay for the entire labor force of 20 people to work for 1 month. How about that? And we pay our labor as well, I would add. $1 goes a long way in Nepal. $100 is what the cost would be for the benches and tables of a classroom, or $500 will pay for all the light fixtures and the electric installations in one classroom building, or the rebar for the foundation, because that foundation needs to be strong for the building to be earthquake resistant, or the flooring. $2,000 will buy the entire roof structure that you've seen in that picture, or build all the studded walls, including the siding on the outside. And $5,000 would be the cost of the metal roof or of the entire foundation. I will just say thank you. Thank you for being a chasers of the light together with us. And I think we have a little thank you clip from our staff.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
म सामुएल ज्योतिको सन्तान म बाबा ज्योतिको सन्तान
म लीला ज्योतिको सन्तान साक्षा ज्योतिको सन्तान
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
म मन्जु ज्योतिको सन्तान
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.